No, I think if we look at the controversy surrounding Jacob Zuma in particular, we do need to bear in mind that the Constitutional Court has ruled he is not eligible to be a member of the National Assembly, but that does not preclude the MK sending a representative, and of course, Jacob Zuma using his influence, his charisma, and all of those skills that he has in terms of being a charismatic leader to influence support for the party.
And the party that he has formed, is it likely to have some influence at this election?
It's a very tricky question to ask, because when we start looking at national influence, that is kind of where the crystal ball is a bit hazy. But I do think where we are going to see more influence are in provinces like KwaZulu-Natal, which is a stronghold where Jacob Zuma has a lot of support. And then, of course, the Gauteng province, if one thinks of the migrant labor and mining communities.
Mm-hmm. Joleen, the ANC has fallen out of favour in recent years. Is this largely because people feel they have not really delivered on expectations?
What we see with the ANC, I think, is very much what we see with trajectories of liberation parties. And we have seen this in Zimbabwe, for example. We are seeing this now in South Africa, that after a 30-year period, there's almost a bit of liberation fatigue. Those promises that remain elusive, life is not necessarily getting better. And your youth, remember, we have a very youthful population. So that liberation narrative may not necessarily connect as strongly with the youth.
Yeah. So which other parties, if, say, the ANC doesn't get an outright majority, which other parties might they likely look to share power with?
Again, that is going to be where the still little bit hazy. If we look at our history with coalitions, your smaller political parties, most notably the EFF, use this for political expediency and to get their policy matters on the political agenda. So we could possibly see an ANC-EFF coalition, or we could see the ANC trying to form a bigger party coalition with lots of the other smaller parties.
How have you felt about Cyril Ramaphosa? He was Nelson Mandela's right-hand man for so many years. Do you feel he was ineffective, or was he hamstrung?
I think we need to bear in mind that context is important. And when Cyril Ramaphosa took over as leader of the African National Congress, the ANC was embroiled in quite a lot of let's say, repute, most notably around state capture, corruption, trying to kind of root out those dysfunctions in government that we saw. So Cyril Ramaphosa essentially came into power, or into the ANC leadership, under this guise of it's time for a renewal. But we do have to bear in mind that renewal and the dysfunction you saw at state level might not necessarily only take 5 years in order to get a functioning state bureaucracy. So I think, if one gives a realistic outlook on Cyril Ramaphosa's performance, bearing in mind the pandemic, the post-pandemic context, he has steered the ship actually quite well.
So do you think there will be inroads made in what appears to be this endemic corruption crippling the country?
We have seen some cases of, the state coming forward and wanting to hold individuals accountable. There has been steps taken for that. We have seen, for me, I think the symbolism around the Jacob Zuma Concord ruling is the application of the rule of law, that we are trying to say the rules apply equally to everybody. But again, it is going to take some time, bearing in mind some of the high-ranking individuals and the sensitivities around individuals involved.
Yeah, it's a good point. Let's talk about political renewal. Are you seeing young leaders coming through that want to make a difference, that want to change the dynamic?
No, we definitely are. And it's quite an interesting dynamic if you kind of look at some of your new political players that have come on board, your Action SA, Rise, and you look at their social media profiles and things that they share of their events, there's a lot of young faces there. I do think it is also important to bear in mind that in South Africa, as within other parts of the world, you could very well find a youth population doing politics a bit differently. So not necessarily through party structures, but possibly through activism or through community service or community influence that eventually then translates into a vote for a particular party based on a particular service delivery or alternatively ideological orientation.
Yeah, really interesting. Well, we'll watch with interest as it plays out next week. Great to talk. Thanks so much.
Thank you.